Are you considering taking Tauck's Grand Australia and New Zealand Land Tour and are wondering if it's worth the big price tag? Well, from my own personal experience and also from a lot of reviews from my clients, I think it's definitely worth it. So let me get into it and tell you what my thoughts are on that particular Tauck trip. Hey there, travel lovers. It's your trusted cruise and Tauck tour and Africa safari expert, Shawn Power here. And like I said, today I want to talk about Tauck's Grand Australia and New Zealand Land Tour. Now, a lot of you know me as a cruise expert, and I've been on almost 100 cruises over the last 20 or so years. I've booked literally, I think, 60 or $70 million worth of cruises for my clients. So I absolutely love to cruise. So when a lot of people heard that I went to Australia and New Zealand and I did a Tauck Land Tour, their question is always why? Like, why did you do that over a cruise? Because a lot of people think they want to take a cruise when they're in that area. And the reason I decided to do Tauck's Land Tour is I did a lot of research and I also had a lot of feedback from my clients over the years. And there were some negatives about it that I just didn't like, when you take a cruise. For one, just to get in between Australia and New Zealand, if you look at all these itineraries, usually they spend anywhere from 3 to 5 days at sea. So for starters, you're going to fly like 30, 36 hours sometimes to get from home to Australia and New Zealand. I mean, you're going a ways away, to get there. And you want to maximize your vacation time. So when you look at these itineraries, 25 to somewhere as much as 55% of your trip was spent at sea. So you're flying all that way and you're not even really seeing a whole lot. So right away I knew that, I wanted to kind of maximize my time a little bit more when flying so far. So that was one thing that, the cruises had against them. And then also I'd heard the seas were actually pretty rough. A lot of my clients over the years, who I'd sent down there on cruises before I knew about Tauck's Land Tour, said the waters were rough. I heard it from colleagues. And even me, I went back to Australia and New Zealand a second time a few years after my Tauck Land Tour, and I was on a cruise. And it was literally some really rough waters, especially around Sydney. I mean, I've been on, like I said, almost 100 cruises, and I was actually really surprised how it was some of the roughest waters out there. And especially when you cross between Australia and New Zealand, they say that's can be quite choppy. So the point is, if you don't want to waste time on your vacation, and you also, maybe rough waters aren't your thing, you're going to want an alternative how to see this area. And again, you want to see Australia and New Zealand when you're in this part of the world because you're flying so far, so you don't want to miss either. So basically, I ended up doing Tauck's Grand Australian New Zealand Land Tour. And since then, I've had dozens and dozens of my clients who've done it. And I think the number one reason why we all think it's, well worth, because, you look at it, it's a pretty expensive price tag. I think $17,000 a person is, on the starting end. But it's also a trip halfway through, literally everyone was saying, how is this all that you pay? And I'll explain why that is in a second here. So basically, when you do this trip, there's a lot of private flights involved, which makes everything about the trip, is really what's unique about the trip, in my opinion, because you save a lot of time and you see a lot more than when you're on a cruise. So how it works is, so for example, when I started, I flew into Melbourne in Australia, and you spend a couple of days there with Tauck. Always get yourself into Melbourne early because, for one, you want to get over the jet lag. I mean, again, you're on a very different time zone. If you're one of my clients and you book with me, if you're new to Tauck, I'm going to get you a free hotel night in Melbourne, so don't worry about that. If you're a return guest to Tauck, as long as you book far enough in advance, you're probably familiar with that. You got to book, July 30, by July 31st the year before for a trip the year after. Again, I can explain all this to you. But the point is, I should be able to get you a free hotel, and if not, I'll get you some kind of gift card or something to, hopefully make up for a bit of that. But the point is, you want to get to Melbourne at least a day early, 2 or 3 if you can. I mean, I went in a couple of days early. A lot of my clients have even gone in 3 days early. Easy city to navigate, walk around, and acclimate. But the point is, you start off in Melbourne and you spend some time there with Tauck. And then after a couple of days, they take you to the airport, which is like 20 minutes away. And I'm literally not kidding. We pull up to this private airport hangar with a red carpet. We got off the bus and we all went in and had a quick wash and break. Within 15 minutes of getting off the bus, we were like flying away. No security, no check-in, no anything. Next thing you know, we go out and we land in Uluru, Ayers Rock, which is like the heart of Australia. Really spiritual kind of part of the country, very important. It's got a lot to do with the natives and, a lot of history over the years. Point being, when you're on a cruise, you're not going to see this unless you fly in early and you take a commercial flight out and a commercial flight back. And I mean, even when we got to Ayers Rock, it was so unique because we landed and we basically stepped off. Again, there was the red carpet, there was the bus. We went right to Ayers Rock. We went to the Welcome Center, had a little overview. We had a nice lunch, went to the hotel. That evening, we go back for a beautiful sunset, canopies and drinks kind of evening. And then basically, we sleep over. The next morning we wake up, we go spend more time walking all around and learn all the history and everything. And then we get whisked back out to the airport where again, our flight is literally right there. There was no check-in or anything. That time it took us about 10 minutes to get off the bus and be flying away where we went to Cairns. But the point is, if you go to Ayers Rock normally, people say it's like a real hassle. They got to go to, Melbourne or Sydney, be at the airport for a few hours, fly out. They got to get their bags. They got to go through the whole thing at the airport. They might get to the Ayers Rock in the evening just to see the sunset, and then they got to basically fly the next morning, so they don't even have time to tour around. And this gets repeated again and again and again everywhere you go. So again, we flew from Melbourne to Ayers Rock in the private, charter plane, up to Cairns in a private charter plane, down to Sydney in the private charter plane. Now, when we flew between Sydney and Wellington, New Zealand, we did have to do a commercial flight because there's customs and stuff involved. We couldn't do a private flight, but that's the only commercial flight we had to take the whole time. And then throughout New Zealand, we had 3 flights. Again, Wellington to Blenheim, and I can't remember off the top of my head where we went south and we went up to Auckland. But the point was, these were all private flights. For like 20 of us, I happened to have 20 on the trip I was on. Some of these might have 30 on them, but none of them are going to be huge groups. And these are planes that will fit like 100 or so people, like a normal jet. So it was fabulous. So the point is, because you're taking these private flights, you're going to save so much time, and you're going to see a lot more. So this is why, it's probably the #1 reason why this trip is so popular with my clients, and why everyone who's done it that I ever know of say it's worth it. Because again, you're flying to literally the middle of nowhere, and you want to see as much as you can. And again, I would say on average, because I've talked about it with cruisers, and they say, okay, I saw this, and this, and then I say, and I saw this, and this. It's like 50% more what you see on Tauck's, land tour. And again, this is the Grand Australia and New Zealand one compared to on a cruise. And I made a list of some things here just because I saw so many highlights down there. It was unbelievable. And these were things that, it seems like, I think you can only see on the land tour that you can't see on the cruises. And I left out all the stuff that you can see on the cruises. So I didn't even mention when you're up in Cairns, going to the crocodile farm and doing the sky rail through the rainforest, because you can do that on a cruise. And I did mention certain things in Sydney, but again, these are just some things that I saw that, again, I don't think you can on a cruise. And if so, you're gonna have to fly in early and spend an awful lot of money to do all that. So like I said, just going out to Ayers Rock, out to Uluru, again, you're not gonna do that while you're on a cruise. It's just too far away. It's out in the middle of nowhere. And again, that was a fabulous experience, with the sunset and, learn about the history and the culture. It was absolutely fabulous. Up in Cairns, we stayed in the rainforest in a luxury lodge for a few days. And that's of course where we went out to the Great Barrier Reef and everything. We enjoyed a hot air balloon over that area up in Cairns. What else? When we went to the, even when we went to the Great Barrier Reef, we had more time because again, we started at a hotel and came back at a hotel. We weren't rushing to the cruise ship, so we had a little bit more time. And we were able to do a bit more of a private boat kind of tour out there. When we were in New Zealand, we went to a lot of wineries, because that's what they're famous for, and had a lot of great meals over there. Again, we wouldn't have a lot of time for all these, especially some of these evening meals that we had because the ships are gone by then. We went to a sheep farm, saw a sheep shearing demonstration. In New Zealand, this is where a lot of Lord of the Rings stuff was filmed. We did this jet boat ride, and then when we were done with that, Tauck took us in a helicopter and whisked us back into, I think it was Queenstown, if I remember. So again, we did all these, unique things. We were in Auckland, and we did I think I'm pronouncing it right, a Maori, which is the local, natives. It was like a Maori haka dance. So powerful. You see it at the rugby games and on some of the sporting events on TV, and to see that live was just fabulous. The other thing I liked about Tauck was not only did we see a lot more, but Tauck does a lot of private things. And, for those of you who work with me, 40% of my business with Tauck. So, this is the same on a lot of Tauck trips, but they did a lot of private stuff when we were in the Australia, New Zealand area. So when we were in Sydney, yes, we went to the Opera House like a lot of people do, but we had a private tour just for the 20 of us. Then we literally went on a private boat ride around Sydney Harbor. I think that boat fit 50, 60 people. It was just for us. And, we had a little champagne and some appies and everything. It was great. Same thing when we went over to New Zealand. We go to the Parliament building because Wellington is the capital. We have a private tour there. We go to Marlborough Sound where there's a lot of great, wildlife. We're out on a boat and you see the dolphins and the seals and everything. Again, there was 20 of us on this boat that could fit 50 or 60 people. And we had this beautiful lunch with the green tip mussels and the local wines and everything else. Same thing, we go to Milford Sound, which is, the big fjord. And again, same thing, private boat. So there was so much private stuff. We go to Peter Jackson, who's the creator of Lord of the Rings, director, writer, producer. He has this private museum. And, you know, we go there one evening, again, just the 20 of us, and we have a private viewing, but also a dinner in this private museum that, yeah, that Peter Jackson owns. Again, stuff you couldn't even go on a cruise because you're not around in the evening. But again, cruises don't have access like Tauck does. And again, there's too many people on the cruises to enjoy that. And a couple of last things, like I said, we did the, over in Auckland, there was this island about 20 minutes from Auckland, or maybe 40 minutes, this beautiful island where a lot of people live, and they had like a private olive tasting for us, olive oil tasting at one of the farms there. So like I said, it was, you know, it's just so many private events with Tauck, which made it a highlight. But again, if you're considering this tour, the reason why I really think that you want to, you know, go for it, if it works out for you budget wise and timing wise, if you got that 3 weeks and you got the money, you're going to love it because of these private flights. And again, I've personally done it. I'll put a link underneath this video to my full review of that tour so you can learn more about it. Any questions, let me know through my comments or through ShawnPower.com. Send me a link. And again, I've had dozens of clients enjoy it. So again, if you're looking at this, I hope it works out for you, because again, it's a wonderful tour. The best way to see Australia and New Zealand, in my opinion. And again, anything I do to help you out, let me know along the way. All right, we'll see you in the next video, and have a great day. Bye-bye.